Welcome back to all of our viewers who have stayed with us on Channel 6 and who have been joining us from time to time or continuously across the various social media platforms on our live stream Ignite Elections Update 2025. We've been with you since yesterday morning, giving you updates, insights, perspectives from stakeholders here in Guyana, observers who have joined us here in Guyana to participate in the 2025 elections to help to underpin the integrity of the process through their observations and reports. And like we had in 2020, local and international observers play a pivotal role, a key, crucial role in underpinning the democratic process that we embrace and undertake every 5 years as a nation when it comes to elections. The electorate this year was over 700,000 people, and over 27,000 of them were first-time voters, most of them young people voting for the first time, having attained the age of 18 before the elections. And the conduct of the poll yesterday, we've been getting the feedback already, and we will get some more feedback in a few minutes on how the conduct of the elections were seen, incident-free for the large part, it would seem, and free, fair, and transparent. Hopefully, that will be the pronouncement by all the observer missions. More than 500 in total for the local observers and more than 200 for the international observers. In the international contingents, we see representatives from the Commonwealth, from the Organization of American States, from CARICOM, from the Carter Center, and other international stakeholders who support Guyana's quest to remain a democratic nation among the League of Nations that make up the democratic world. So far, if we were to look at the update as we've seen on the GCOM portal, a beautiful new feature GCOM has introduced for the 2025 elections, taking away the long wait, is to introduce the uploading of the SOPs from every electoral district the moment it's tabulated and signed off by the returning officers in the various districts. So every single SOP is being scanned and uploaded digitally to the gallery that has been established by GCOM, allowing the electorate and the rest of the world to see in real time what GCOM is seeing, so that we can do our own tabulations and come to our conclusions. Hopefully we wait for the declarations by GCOM, but by and large, we can see what's happening and we can follow the numbers. And so far, more than 90% of the SOPs have been uploaded that you can see if you go on that portal now. In Region 9, or from the electoral district of Region 9, we have more than 98% of the SOPs uploaded. In Region 5, District 5, 99%, District 4, 99%, District 2, 94%, and from District 3, we have 100% of the SOPs already uploaded and visible for all of you to see on the GCOM gallery. I am joined now by the distinguished gentleman, the Deputy Chair of the Commonwealth Observer Mission for the 2025 elections, Mr. Darrell Bradley. Darrell is the former president of the Belizean Senate and the former mayor of the city of Belize. We are indeed in the presence of political and leadership royalty, if you will, here in the Caribbean. To have a man of this stature join us and share his perspectives, well, particularly on behalf of the Commonwealth contingent here. And I'm sure he'll be willing to give us his own perspectives from Belize, given their experience in electoral processes, compare and stack up against what we're doing here in Guyana. Mr. Bradley, welcome to the Ignite Elections Update, and we're very happy that you could have found the time to join us.
Thank you very much, and it is indeed a pleasure.
Yesterday polls opened promptly across the country at 6 a.m. and closed, hopefully, promptly at 6 p.m. The law allows for all persons who are in a line at a polling station to be served, allowed to vote, however long it takes, even when that 6 o'clock p.m. shut-off time arrives. And so hopefully within short order, by 6 and the minutes following 6 p.m., all voters who were part of the official list of electors were able to cast their ballots. Your observations, how the day went yesterday, and your team?
So we had teams from the Commonwealth Observer Mission deployed to 7 regions of Guyana. We follow what is called a whole election approach. So we would have evaluated and obtained our impressions in pre-election activities. We would have met with the social partners, all the political parties. We would have looked at the campaign. We would have met extensively with GCOM representatives. Then yesterday we would have deployed to these 7 regions by pairs, and I was deployed to Region 4, and we would have obtained our observations in relation to the actual polling. And today we're looking at the tabulations and we're looking at the counting, and we would be here until the announcement of the winners. But generally I observed, and we're collecting our feedback throughout the country, but generally I observed that things were peaceful. It was very organized. It was smooth. I observed that the Guyanese people were exercising their franchise quite enthusiastically. I started the day off at Plassens, and I ended the day off at the African Museum for the count, but throughout the day we noticed not any significant irregularities. Things seem to have unfolded in a very professional way, and the Guyanese people should be congratulated in terms of their exercise of this another chapter in their democratic life.
One presidential candidate contesting these elections, and I'm not drawing you into politics, but certainly from your observations, as you said, it was professionally conducted. One presidential candidate described the GCOM exercise as mediocre at best.
Well, we are observers, and it would be our mandate to look at the whole of election process. And we follow international principles, and we look at the laws of Guyana in relation to an overall independent and impartial assessment of the process. So we are not, and one of our seniors have cautioned, we're not here to find fault. We're here to find fact. We observe the democratic process as it unfolds, and we give an impartial and objective but informed assessment as it relates to what we have observed. So we're not critical. We are here to support the Guyanese people and the institutions within Guyana in terms of their democratic process.
So having observed preliminarily that the conduct of the elections throughout yesterday was professionally handled, then that's what you're underscoring. It was professionally done.
What we would say is that we have not released our findings as yet. We are still collecting information. Many of our deployment teams have not come back in Georgetown as yet. I can speak personally in relation to the polling stations that I attended in terms generally of the feedback, but we will be releasing an interim statement tomorrow in terms of our preliminary findings. So we are expecting that our deployment team will come back into Georgetown. We are gathering and continuing to gather our assessment. Even today, we are continuing our impressions because we are keenly observing the tabulation processes. We have not had an overall assessment because the results have not finished. It would be remiss of us to come up with a conclusion prior to the determination of a winner. And then also, too, we look at the announcement, we look at how that's handled. And so our general process is that we will release an interim statement with our preliminary findings gathered from all of the observers as part of the Commonwealth mission. And then in a roughly 3-month period, we would release a more comprehensive report, which would have our entire findings together with our recommendations.
What in the full gamut of elements of the process is your team observing today, the day after the close of polls?
So this morning, what I would have done is that I personally would have gone to the tabulation center in Area 4. So we're looking at we were up pretty late, and so we were up perhaps close to midnight in relation to just having an assessment, observing the count, seeing how the statement of polls would have been posted up, gathering information. And this morning, many of the members of our delegation would have visited the tabulation centers. They would have looked at the tabulation processes. We would have seen things which we are encouraged by. And we are waiting, as I'm sure all Guyanese are, in terms of how quickly that tabulation process will be completed and how quickly an announcement of the results will be made.
In real terms, what does observing look like in a tabulation center when your mission goes there? Do you just stand and watch? Do you object if you see breaches occurring? Do you request perhaps a recount or revisit of a particular process if you're not clear as to what you saw or versus what it should be? Or do you just look?
So I want to be very careful. We're not election monitors. We are election observers. And so our mandate would be to observe the elections. And one of the cardinal rules of observation is that we do not interfere. So we would have observed the count, we are observing the tabulation process, and we are impartial. Many of the election observers are practitioners in their own country, technical practitioners, academic experts, election observation experts, political officers within their own country. And so we would come here just to observe, and it would be our obligation to do an assessment of the elections based on the laws that the people of Guyana has given to themselves. So there are certain international principles and certain documents that the people of Guyana as a sovereign state would have signed onto. And we look at the domestic law of Guyana, and we use that as a baseline to make a determination as to whether or not the election has been conducted in a way that is credible, in a way that is transparent, and in a way that is inclusive.
And just to be absolutely clear, by observe you mean you just watch?
We watch. So one of the things that is oftentimes looked at is, well, what's the benefit of just watching? And I think that observation...
And you say nothing at all while watching?
We would not interfere in the election. So
meaning you would say nothing at all to the officials who are doing the tabulation?
We would make an informed inquiry. So what I would do is that when I was at the tabulation center, we asked questions. We would have gone around, we would have looked at what the persons would have done. Last evening when I was observing the count, we would have looked at the various SOPs, we would have spoken to the counting agents, the presiding officers. At the tabulation center this morning, I would have conducted inquiries and asked persons, well, why are you doing that? What's the benefit of this? We look at instances like the technology and the speed at which the SOPs are brought in. So our mission is an observation mission.
And all of these things you're watching and noting.
We're noting. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're just there as just observing, but we're making our inquiries, and it is an informed assessment. So we are election analysts in our own right, and we know things to look for, and the team is specially set up based on their varied experiences, and we come together to formulate an assessment. But it is an observation mission.
Being the former president of the Belize Senate, certainly you don't see this as me interrogating you, but taking you down a certain line of clarity for the sake of our viewers.
Interrogation is not a problem. That's not a problem.
Because the reason I'm at pains to get this clear, because in the past we've had accusations by those who seek to disrupt the democratic process for their own political mileage, make unfounded accusations about international observer teams interfering or raising suspicion about their involvement and the extent to which they were involved, so that they can erode the credibility of the various observer missions, as I said, for their own political benefit. And so forgive me for probing so much into ensuring that you clarify what is it that you're doing in those polling booths and tabulation booths.
Never apologize for making inquiries. But one of the things that I will say is that the Commonwealth has had a 45-year tradition of election observation. So this has been a science that the Commonwealth has developed over its years of expertise. This is, in fact, the 8th mission that the Commonwealth has deployed to look at the national elections in Guyana since 1992. So the Commonwealth has shared a strong tradition with Guyana, and the Commonwealth supports Guyana on its journey in democracy. And the observation mission is testimony of that. I also want to add that it's not only in relation to observation, but there are good offices, support that the Commonwealth provides. In addition to that, the Commonwealth has supported 2 election experts that have been assisting GCOM over the entire election cycle. So the election observation mission is supplanted by other support that the Commonwealth gives to the government and people of Guyana.
After the conclusion of the 2020 general and regional elections that the Commonwealth was very much a part of, being an observer mission for those elections, recommendations were made in the final report. You're back now 5 years down the road. Has the Commonwealth looked at evidence of implementation of any of those recommendations vis-a-vis the conduct of the 2025 elections and the systems perhaps that were probably flagged for improvements in 2020, whether any of those improvements have been made?
So we've noted that there are legislative amendments that have been made. And so this is one of the things that the Commonwealth would routinely observe within the member states when there is an observation mission. To what extent have there been implementation in relation to the previous observation recommendations that would have been made? And so when you look at our report, which would come out in a few months, you would see in the index to the report that there would have been a tying into the previous report from 2020, and there would have been a general comment and note in relation to the level of implementation as it relates to various of the recommendations. Some of the recommendations would have been implemented completely. Some of the recommendations would have been partially implemented. So one of the things that we're looking at in this observation mission, and we're gathering our considerations, and we're gathering the input from GCOM and the political directorate and so forth in relation to those recommendations. For example, we were told that some of the recommendations are more difficult because it requires constitutional amendments, whereas some that would have been more administrative and legislative, only requiring statutory law, would have been implemented. We did note that there were some improvements, but this is something we would speak more intensely in our final document.
Would you care to highlight any specific recommendation made in 2020 that was implemented or not implemented?
Well, we could note that. I don't generally want to get into specifics, but some of the things that we noted is in relation to the legislative changes. There is the production of manuals, the siphoning out of a procedural process in relation to the tabulation process. Even when I was observing last evening, I noticed that that was very methodical and deliberate, the publication of the SOPs. So there has been an addition, this is a general comment, there has been an addition of greater transparency to the process. But of course, all of this will be considered in line with all of the recommendations from the experts. I can't speak on behalf of the entire team because we haven't come together in relation to the final document. But we've noted in our observation mission that there has been legislative changes. And the people of Guyana can observe that. As you mentioned earlier, people can track the SOPs being uploaded. You can see that in real time. And so any individual person can actually look at those things. And it's part of the confidence building measures that is a requirement of GCOM and of all Guyanese. You want to have confidence in your electoral process to say on a whole that this election receives a pass mark because it was credible, it was inclusive, and it was transparent.
So when you came with the mission and they assigned you to Region 4, were you aware that Region 4 was the ant's nest, the nest of the ant's nest, as we were saying in Guyana? I want to make certain that you're able to understand the local parlance. We say it's an ant's nest. We say in Guyana it's something, a hotbed. In 2020, Region 4 was the epicenter of problems for the 2020 elections. Were you aware?
Well, of course, when we do the observation mission, there's a continuity, as what I said. So there's a continuity from the mission from 2020. We would, of course, read all those briefs. We would have looked at the report from 2020 prior to our deployment to the country. We would have studied the electoral climate. So we're very familiar. And I'm from the Caribbean.
And you are happy to accept assignment to Region 4?
Of course. It's part of a Commonwealth observer's obligation to go into regions of the Commonwealth, and the Commonwealth is committed to the democratic process of member states. The Guyanese government invited the Commonwealth to observe. This is the 8th observation mission. So there's that relationship and transformation. And when we were deployed to Area 4, there was no reluctance in that sense. We will go where the work is. Yeah. And if that is the area where there may be concerns or there may be an issue where we would have to observe, we would do our responsibility. We would note our findings. We would do an informed deliberation. Sometimes one of the things that I would oftentimes hear is that people in the public make a certain comment, but when you look at it, there's a reason for why certain things are done. And the election mission is very much methodical and deliberate in that process. And so our interim statement is something that I would encourage members of your audience to just look at. We're going to have our press conference tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. We invite everybody to attend the press conference. And our final report, which would be much more substantive and detailed with our recommendations, would have our general observations. But we would go and we would be deployed throughout all regions, including Region 4 of Guyana.
Well, we hope that all Guyanese, particularly those who participated in the process and have a vested interest in hearing the observations made by the various observer missions, would tune in to that press conference tomorrow. You said at 9 a.m.?
It's going to be at 9 a.m. It's going to be in person and live, and of course we invite everyone to attend. It's going to be at the Eden Hotel.
Great. We hope that people will tune in. But just as we wrap up, do you care to share any insights from your own experience as a former president of the Senate of Belize and mayor of the city of Belize, comparatively in terms of how democracy is working in Guyana through elections, what you would have read about and learned about over the past 2 or 3 elections here in Guyana, where we are in 2025, and perhaps best practices that you can point to Belize, the Caribbean, the Commonwealth, and here in Guyana?
Well, one of the things that I would note generally is that there are things that the Guyanese people can teach other members of the Commonwealth. One of the things that I observed, interestingly, is the presence of information booths at the polling site. That is something that I don't oftentimes see on deployment missions. That's something that we noted. We noted that it was heavily used. So a general comment that I would make is democracy. People oftentimes think that there are events in terms of democratic processes. An election is an event in a democratic journey of a country. But democracy is not an event, it's a process. And we are evolving, we are adapting, hopefully, to improve practices in our democratic culture. One of the things that I have been impressed upon is just the excitement with which the Guyanese people showed in relation to this election, and the commitment of people to want to move beyond 2020 and to really show the global community that Guyana is a democratic country, and there is a strong commitment to democracy. But of course, democracy is a process. It's not an event. It's something that is evolving. And I was very pleased to be part of this process in observing this mission in terms of Guyana. When we do the deployment missions, we make our independent assessment, but our assessment has to be grounded within the local culture, within the political history and the context within the state. You're not bringing anything from abroad and imposing it within the local context. You're looking at what the people of Guyana has designed for themselves, and you're giving an evaluation to see whether or not the people commit themselves to what they say in law that they will do. And generally, I can say that in terms of polling, it was something that was conducted in a way that was satisfactory. We, of course, encourage the people of Guyana to continue to be restrained and continue to be calm and to await the results of the elections in due course. In terms of the tabulation centers, one of the things that we look at is just a communication message. What are people saying post-elections? And that all political parties, all government officials, GCOM, election observers are there advising the people of Guyana to let democracy work, to be calm, to be very mature in terms of your exercise, in terms of a political animal. I'm a politician. We have our differing views, but we're all committed to the democratic process and the rule of law. And so we look at this, we observe this, and we would make our interim statement tomorrow. And it was just a pleasure for us to be part of this process, to walk along with the Guyanese people in this another journey or chapter or event within their democratic process.
Just before I let you go, I want to pick up on something you alluded to there in your last comment. You said you look at the design of our electoral system that we have in place. We have a system for polling on election day in the polling stations that is pretty unique in its design, and I'm interested in hearing your perspective as to how it stacks up against similar systems across the Commonwealth. When a voter goes to a polling booth on election day, they have to present their ID outside of the polling station, just to verify, first of all, before they can even enter, that their name is on the official list of electors. When they get inside, there's an officer there that takes the card, checks again against the list, very methodically, and cross-references the ID number, the registration number, and everything that is on the official voters list, and announces it for everyone within that station to hear. Returning officer, deputy returning officer, all of the GCOM staff, and representatives, party agents for all the contesting parties are seated there. That voter then moves from that desk to another desk for another verification, and then perhaps to another desk for another verification. Then that person is advised on how to mark the X, having been given a ballot, having been shown that it's being stamped the way it is required by law, and folded and presented to the voter. Then the voter is directed to the booth and advised how to exercise that franchise. When that is done, the voter comes back, hands that ballot, well, not hands it to the officer, but inserts it into the ballot box, gets their finger inked, and the process is done. In terms of the design of that process, how does it match up? Is it common in other Commonwealth countries?
In terms of what generally we observed, in the conduct of the polling itself, this would be consistent, so that there would be a verification process and you would go through various stations. But one of the things that we would observe and note is the time in which people take to vote. And we did not note, or I didn't see any grave delay in relation to the actual voting process. I noted that people were in and out there in a matter of a couple minutes. So it wasn't something that persons were asked to verify themselves in circumstances where it would have been inappropriate. Generally, the voting process proceeded along quite smoothly and in a very timely and efficient manner. It wasn't a lot of time that people took in the actual voting process.
And so in terms of best practices, Guyana stands out among other Commonwealth countries?
Well, one of the things that I will say is we would note all of our observations, and we would include those observations in the interim statement and the final report. I don't want to speak out of turn because, I mean, observers throughout the country may have observed things differently.
All right. Well, we've been talking with Mr. Darrell Bradley, the Deputy Chair of the Commonwealth Observer Mission. He's a former president of the Belizean Senate and mayor of the city of Belize. He's part of a very large Commonwealth delegation observer mission who has been here since before the campaign launch, all the way through nominations day, the entire electoral process, spread out across the country, looking at the exercise of political parties and GCOM in relation to the 2025 elections. He has indicated that the Commonwealth will be presenting its preliminary findings at a press conference scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. That, of course, will be carried live by most media houses, so you can tune in at 9 o'clock to your favorite social media platform or television station, and I'm pretty sure that you will find that broadcast coming your way so that you can benefit from the information that will be provided there in that press conference to inform and satisfy your own curiosity about the conduct of the 2025 elections based on the observations of friends from the outside who have come in, who have been invited in, who have graciously come in to help to serve the Guyanese people, help to underpin our democratic process, and help to lend some amount of credibility or make genuine and strong observations where credibility does not exist in their opinion based on their observations. Whatever their findings are, they generally release preliminarily in that press conference following the day of poll, and then finally in a report on the conclusion of the mission. So we look forward to hearing from the Commonwealth mission, as we do from the Carter Center and the OAS and CARICOM and the local observer missions, private sector commission, AmCham, and all the other stakeholders who have been part of this process. We want to thank you very much for tuning in on Channel 6 and joining us on the live stream across the various social media platforms. We will keep updating you as the tabulations, well, not tabulations, the posting of the SOPs continue on the GCOM website. You can see them for yourself once you go on to the GCOM gallery. For the statements of polls, you will see statements of polls from across the country being uploaded, digital copies being uploaded almost in real time, so that you can follow just what GCOM is seeing, you have the benefit of seeing in real time. So we thank you. We ask that you keep the peace, that you continue to be interested and involved in the process until it's concluded, so that elections 2025 could be marked in history as yet another juncture in Guyana's democratic journey that we all can be very proud of. Thank you very much. We'll join you again on top of the hour or at the bottom of the hour, but stay tuned. You will see more from us.